Hello folks, this is Paragon RG and I want to talk a little bit more about map control. Check out my last video if you want to see the earlier conversation in this. But basically what we're trying to get at is, what is map control? How do you get it? What advantages does it provide? What disadvantages do you have when you don't have it? And things like that. We're going to watch a game from the Viper's point of view. He'll be playing on Dry Arabia against Kasva. Delhi Sultanate versus the Abbasid Dynasty. And Dry Arabia is the perfect map to investigate map control because it is so open. And so in that case, the player that has the map control often gets to dictate the entire course of the game. So let's go ahead and check out the match. We are in here. Viper is in the red, as I mentioned, playing as the Delhi Sultanate. Take a quick look at his build here. Immediate lumber camp, mill. I'm assuming gold mine will follow quite closely. A little bit of a nasty forward gold, but we work with what we have, and we'll see when the mosque goes down as well. I feel like I always forget one building. So 50, so you start with 250 wood. So 50, 50, 50. Right, the house. So he needs that house. That'll be 50. And then he can't afford the mosque. Okay. So house going down now. Okay. There we go. Okay, so let's just double check right off the top. So Viper has not added any more scouts. Scouts are a really simple way, right off the top, an opponent does scout in here, to get more map control, or at least set yourself up for more map control. They do this in a couple ways. So obviously, knowing what's out there on the map is a big part of being able to just operate in the mid to late game. So understanding where there's more gold to move to, right? And hopefully you can keep an eye on how much gold you have left and shift over to it when you need to. Or if there's a really bad situation and you're being completely hammered in your base, imagine you figure out there's a gold like right back here. You can sneak over to it, use that gold to your heart's content. Also, if you've been able to scout around your opponent's base, then you'll know where their possible resources are. So as an example, if Viper wants to raid later, this is an obvious place to do it. And the game makes this really easy. We'll go back to his base for a second. On the minimap, there is a symbol of deer. You can basically hit up all the symbols on your opponent's side in order to figure out where they might be. And in doing so, you can raid really effectively. Mosque now going down for the Viper. And he almost has the gold he needs. A couple more drop-offs from his villagers. So little flow perhaps on the gold. That was my confusion early on. I think this gold should have gone down a little bit earlier for him, but nevertheless, he should be okay. So Scout is really trying to understand what's on his side of the map. He sees the market over here. Wants to get right to the edge, probably right to the corner. And he knows he needs to scout his opponent probably by the 4-minute mark. So we'll take a look at what that scout ends up getting up to in just a few minutes. And so one way to improve all of this is just to get a second scout. Now, it takes more effort, as with everything with map control. It takes more work. But you can have, first of all, you could have scouted this, maybe scouted all the rest of this black area by now with a second scout, at the cost of not having a villager. Enemy scout with lots of sheep. And then, as I mentioned, around the 4-minute mark, you're going to want to see what your opponent is up to, what landmark they're going up with, and things like that. So here he comes now. We will wait and see. Efficient military production being researched, as well as piety following that. The piety may get cancelled, rather paused for Delhi. They don't cancel techs in favor of, sanctity, so we can capture sacred sites. Almost cut myself off there. Worth keeping in mind, your opponent as Abbasid. I'm assuming this must be the economic wing when it builds on this side here. I don't really have the look of each wing memorized, especially during the build. But we'll continue running around there. New Age begins. So remember that The Delhi want the sacred sites. They get double gold once they have Sanctity for doing so. Actual points on the map, especially for anyone who's played... This is obvious to someone who's played games like Company of Heroes, where there are points on the map that you need to capture. Map control is everything. And more so with Delhi than with other factions, map control is extremely important. Switches to Sanctity, puts a pause on Piety. So he will be going for those sacred sites when he gets a chance. Is adding another scholar now. This has enough wood for some sort of military building. Looks like a stable. It does have a blacksmith to get those techs going as quickly as possible. Let's get a quick check on the time required. So, probably 2 minutes, 2 minutes 40 seconds for each. Actually, you can see here 2:45. Really quite slow. You want to do that early. So I think this is the economic wing. And yeah, it must be. We see fresh foodstuffs here, which of course we can see as observers, and he cannot. We'll run over here. Something that I noticed players, I think from StarCraft particularly, and even Age of Empires 2, have pointed out, it's really difficult to stop your opponent from scouting in this game. The line of sight is so large from a scout that you can sit them over here and still see what's going on over here, and then of course your opponent's military units won't see you unless they actually head over in that direction. So in some cases, even when you don't have map control, you can run around with a scout to just investigate what your opponent is up to, find more spots on the map you haven't explored, follow armies that are moving around, and so on. 2 horsemen now headed out on the map, may swing by the sacred site if they can, or they're just swinging around wide. We'll keep an eye on them. Adding a barracks now as well. Scholar is inside of the stable with 2 total scholars. Garrison. And does see the sacred site. Continues swinging around this side. Has by now explored almost all of the map. We'll probably eventually want to explore more of the corners. Exploring the map is definitely a luxury of early on, of just being early in the game, right? Keep in mind that if you lose map control, you may not be able to scout very effectively. One thing they did in AoE4 to, as I mentioned, it's hard to shut down scouting, but they did make scouts the same speed as knights. So horsemen are faster. On top of that, knights are faster when they're charging. We're popping to the back. Probably won't get any villager kills, but we'll see. Yeah, I don't think so. Oh, may hang out for one. Doesn't manage to get it. The opponent now is camel, archers, and horsemen. Actually, a bit of a mean combination. The camels will debuff horsemen within a certain radius. Definitely tricky. Is he adding... So it goes for the research for spearmen first, which I usually don't like, but he must have thought he had the time to get away with that. And of course, the research is free, so it's no cost. And then you wait and you just build your spearmen a little bit later. Full horseman pushing out a little. Really wants this mill. Okay, so if Kasva has enough pressure on him here, he can be swinging around, around the front of Viper's base, looking for anything to cause trouble. Anything to disrupt, basically. Of course, if he sees villagers, even if you don't get any kills, driving them back home is a big advantage. So scout going down here. Oh, not quite. Viper Scout ends up going down. So lots of cavalry being used here. Now, people will often talk about early stable is used for map control. So if the Viper knows he wants sacred sites, one way to get them is to add horsemen. So why horsemen? Because they're just faster. They can run around between the sacred sites. If your opponent pushes with archers, you can deal with those. If your opponent has spearmen, you can run away from them. You have that luxury. And of course, it doesn't stop you from making your own spearmen. Spearman does go down there. Viper trying to chase down these camel archers. Not a bad approach. Spearman may finish it off. Doesn't quite do so. They do so much damage to spearmen. Look how quickly these things go down. So big battle over the sacred site. I didn't actually notice Viper had captured it. So That's part of why there's such a big battle over it. This thing is providing 66 gold every 20 seconds to the Viper, and he's now capturing the one down here. So if Castro's force isn't... First of all, if he doesn't have enough of it, he is not going to be able to get down here. And if it's not fast enough, he won't be able to prevent this sacred site from being taken. This is one reason why I love watching Delhi play. I think sacred sites were a brilliant addition to Age of Empires 4. I'm sure some people aren't a big fan of them. But usually, war strategy games are better. Oh, Viper does manage to take this before losing his Scholar. So well played from him. This will still pay off for him. But usually war strategy games are better when there are objectives. So you're not just trying to kill the other guy. The game works fine when you're trying to kill the other guy. Other games have more problems with it, like Total War, you know, someone can just lurk on a hill and the other person doesn't want to go after them. The other person doesn't want to come up or come off the hill. So we don't have that issue because, of course, players are ramping up. But you can still get stalemates, and sacred sites help to prevent that. Viper does manage to prevent this from being neutralized. Getting a ton of gold now. So he should be well on his way to getting to the Castle Age. Lots of villagers on food. Some just taken off now. But looks like they may just move to another mill. Whoops. So he's just spreading out his resource usage, right? You don't want, 30 villagers just powering through your berries. Why? Because just, first of all, it's less efficient when they have to run farther. Less efficient when they have to run around each other to get around berry patches. And then they're just going to plow through them, and it adds problems in the future, right? You know you have to deal with that, quite a bit sooner down the road. You have to find more berries. So scouting out where all of your resources are is super, super important, and I would argue does have an element of map control in it. And of course, he wouldn't be able to be here if he was squeezed into his own base. So Viper at this point, let's just take a look at the minimap and take in the line of sight he has. It isn't incredible, right? We don't have outposts all around here. But first of all, the fact that he has the middle tells you quite a bit. Now, he just lost this. So it kind of tells us that he doesn't really own this flank anymore. But he just took this, and he has military units over here. So Viper sort of owns this this area of the map right now. Villagers do get pushed off of these berries. You will need an answer to this, and of course if Kasva continues scouting and finds these villagers are in big trouble, big enough that it could throw the entire game. Only one spearman will not be enough there. Still does quite a bit of damage though. The Viper needs to be careful here, but actually Kasva is starting to take a bad battle. Spearmen plus the archers are really giving it to him. One nice trick you see good players do is if they don't want to be on, like let's say they've been driven off of a resource, but they just want to be a little closer. In this case, not quite the case, but they want to be a bit closer to their town center. They'll just build a house. Just keep them busy. Okay, big battle for the front of Castro's base here. Viper keeping on the aggression, manages to jump on it before the outpost finishes. Really nice play from him. So this is a huge bummer for Castro. Obviously, he's going to want to finish this outpost, but Viper will probably not let him. So he's going to camp this area. I wouldn't be surprised if we start to see these... Yeah, so barracks is being directed right here. He wants maximal force in this position. He's prevented his opponent from taking berries, and he is now clicked up to the Castle Age and has all sacred sites. You can't have a better position for Delhi. And maybe Castro's going up to castle behind this. But to do it, he's ceded so much map control. Viper's getting all these free resources. That's 600 gold per minute, which is probably something like 14 villagers worth. Just passively with Viper. Moves a single spearman over here. So you do still have to be careful of these kinds of things. This is where map control can feel a little bit illusory. The simple fact is, Viper being here says he kind of owns this section of the map. Think of like a cone coming out from Castro's base. Anywhere he'd have to go through to get to. So, for example, back here, the Viper owns. Now, he can go around, but time matters so much in Age of Empires 4 that you can still sort of assume that sense of ownership simply because you've bought so much time. Viper shifting his units to this top side really wants to take back this sacred site, I think. Just shifting where he's going to be applying that pressure. Castro now trying to bust out. May not know how many units are here, and maybe a little bit caught out here. Lots of spearmen for Castro, though. Viper trying to disengage, take out the camels directly. Archers taking out as many as they can, and pretty much all the spearmen now are down from Castro. Viper really piling on the hurt here. And there it goes. Solid play here from the Viper. I think this is pretty demonstrative of what map control can give you in a game. So, as I mentioned, really important for Delhi to get all those sacred sites. The Viper does it. Once he has it, Castro kind of knows the game is over if he can't. Well, first of all, if he takes a bad battle, if Viper hits Castle Age and he's not clicked up or something like that, he knows he's pretty much seeded the game, and he calls it accordingly. Folks, this has been Paragon RG. I hope you learned something. As always, I learn quite a bit when I go into each of these games with a little bit of intentionality, looking for specific things. So we'll jump into another one shortly. Thanks for sticking around, and I'll catch you next time.